Hey, hello. Welcome to YouTubey-type number 5. Experiment with lighting, as you can see. So learning the game as I go here. So that's going to be interesting. Speaking of learning, I thought one of the reasons why I did my PhD in sociology was because I realized that sociological insights can be very useful within a social movement, not least social movement theory, which is some of the things that I talk about sometime. Social movement theory is very useful for us, particularly enables us to understand how the movement in recent years has really moderated its position, lost its radicalism, and there are now, whether we think about animal rights or whether we think about the vegan movement, there is big pushes to moderate, to de-radicalize, to redefine, big pushes to redefine veganism to be something that essentially is not vegan. So there's a lot going on. So social movement theory can give us some insights into why and how this is kind of happening. So I'll probably get onto that at one point. Also, something comes up, and you see this on Facebook a lot and other social media, I guess. Something I thought I could talk about this time is animal advocates get very distressed because they can't seem to reach their family, and there's a particular point that I'd like to make about that, and there's also a general point about denial. The first is that in a kind of really ironic sense, and of course there are examples where people have really had a big effect on their family. I mentioned the Spence family in the last video, and Mimi Spence, one of the daughters, had a big effect on the views about other animals throughout that family, even as a very small girl. But a lot of people do find resistance, and that is obviously distressing because they're finding resistance amongst the people that they love the most and that they care about. But there is a lot of kind of family baggage goes on in family relations. And so it could well be, in a kind of ironic sense, that a family member is the worst person to try to educate other family members, especially if the family member trying to do the education is younger, one of the kids, and so some of the adults don't want to know. And then there's also a gendered issue too, as well, as if a young woman, for example, might want to educate their father or their elder brothers, for example. There could be an issue there too. So if you are in that situation where you are frustrated because your family is not getting it, they're resistant, they're pushing you away, they're telling you off for raising the issue, then take heart in the fact that it's not your fault here, and it's not that you're not doing something right. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's the fact that the audience might not be the best audience for this. You might be better off just talking to strangers or friends, people less, in a way, less attached to you than your actual family, and attached to you in a different way than your family. Kind of blood relations feel that they've got all kinds of ties which go beyond and above and all this kind of stuff, and it just can be difficult to reach your family. So take heart in that. The general but related point is the fact that what we have to say as vegan animal rights advocates we've got information which, when people think about it for a nanosecond, they're not actually going to want to receive. If you think about it, from their point of view, as a recipient. If you were the recipient and somebody came to you with information that you knew you didn't really want to engage in, then you're going to be resistant to receiving it. And so that's what's going on here. You know, there's no kind of very strange thing, but they do know that if they start to engage with vegan information, animal rights theory, for example, then, you know, things are never going to be the same. And so they can then bring out all their denial techniques in order to push this information away. One of which is, and again this might go back to the family situation, is appeals to, you know, don't spoil don't spoil our meals, you know, don't spoil the dinner, you know. And there's a couple of examples that I used in my PhD which I thought I'd just mention in relation to this as kind of illustration. One is a friend, vegan couple go to their friends to have a meal, and their friends have kids, and so their friends say to them, look, you know, we're not going to talk about food during the meal to the kids. And they said, and they reported this as it were to the researcher, they said when the child brought up the issue of food, the friend of theirs looked over to them and kind of gave them the kind of eye, kind of like, whatever you do, don't get them thinking. Okay. And so there was a big onus on the vegan couple not to answer the child's questions, even though they didn't bring the thing up themselves. And again, this can be characterized as this issue of, you know, don't spoil the dinner. And then there's a great one in relation to Thanksgiving. In fact, I think the first one was in relation to Thanksgiving. You know, it's the North American thing from our perspective. I'm talking from Ireland. And this is interesting in a general sense about people in North America thinking about Thanksgiving, think about Thanksgiving turkey, but they don't think about turkeys at Thanksgiving. There's a kind of big difference there, you know. And so if you do anything to get them thinking about turkeys at Thanksgiving, then that's very disruptive. If the conversation is about Thanksgiving turkey, that's a different matter. You know, it's the same as when flesh consumers talk to vegans, they talk about chicken. We reply by talking about chickens. You know, and you know, there's a big difference there, because we're reimposing the absent referent. We're bringing the animal back into the conversation. So the way that this one goes is that a family were having Thanksgiving, and the vegan daughter was told not to spoil everyone's dinner by bringing up the issue of turkeys at Thanksgiving. And she did anyway. And so her mother kind of dragged her into the kitchen and told her off and said, look, you know, this is Thanksgiving. You're supposed to be thankful. And she replied, I am thankful. I'm thankful I'm not a turkey. And so, again, you know, family relations can be quite fraught. You know, if you really are in that situation where you're not getting through to your family, these are some of the reasons, you know, why it may be, you know. So, so do take heart that it's not your issue particularly, you know, it's not your fault or anything. You know, it's the fact that in some ways you're addressing what potentially could be the hardest of any audience that you might address on this issue, you know. And so you might find, and you might have found already, that talking to your friends or just strangers, you know, in a kind of outreach situation is a lot easier. And that is to be expected. And so don't kind of get depressed. I know some people get very upset about this, but, you know, there's no need to, because the family could actually be your hardest audience. And so leave them, you know. Hopefully they'll come into contact with just the materials, you know, that you might leave around or something. But you, as the advocate, might not be the best kind of person to do this job. So So that's what I wanted to say this time. I hope that was useful, and I hope you're not put off by this spooky Halloween type lighting. I think I have to change this. It doesn't seem to be working, does it? Anyway, so that was my fifth YouTubey type thing. This is a Roger and out, I suppose. So bye for now. Catch you next time.